Welcome back, dear listeners, to another installment of Mystery Thriller Theater, sponsored as always by the Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp and Blue Lake Public Radio. I'm your host, Jessica Humphrey, joined yet again by the Mystery Thriller Theater players. And the Sultan of Sound Effects, David Little. Last week, we traveled all the way to the City of Angels to listen to the adventures of famed lawyer Perry Mason in Earl Stanley Gardner's The Case of the Murdered Musician. For this week's adventure, we must travel quite a bit further, over land and sea, as well as back in time, all the way to late 19th century London. Yes, dear listeners, you have probably already guessed that we will once again be visiting with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's dynamic duo, Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. Now settle back, put your feet up, and enjoy a cup of hot tea or cocoa as we bring you Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Diamond Tiara.
Excuse me, Porter?
Yes, sir.
You didn't see a portly fellow with a beard and a handlebar mustache board the train by any chance?
I saw a few, sir. Can you be more specific?
Holmes? Here is my friend, Porter. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure, sir.
I thought you'd missed the train, Watson.
You left me with little time to arrive, Holmes. In fact, I had to cancel an appointment with a few patients in order to be here on time.
I am sorry, but this is of infinite importance, so never you mind that now.
That's easy for you to say. Mrs. Dearborn's corns will continue to cause her considerable distress until I can reschedule her appointment for next week.
Psst.
What's so important, then, that I had to drop everything?
A case, of course.
Holmes, I assumed as much. You may be the shrewdest man I've yet had the good fortune to meet in this lifetime, but that doesn't mean that I'm dense.
Much to the contrary, my dear friend. I trust you and your intellect implicitly, which is why I needed your assistance on this case. The future of the British Empire may be at stake.
By all means, then, fill me in.
Just this morning, a strange man came to my flat at 221B Baker Street. I saw him from the window before he approached the front door. He was clearly agitated and acting somewhat strangely.
How so?
He had a commanding figure and a strong face, and his clothing was that of a wealthy businessman, expensive and well-tailored, but his actions were in absurd contrast to the dignity of his appearance. He was clearly out of breath from running, and his hands jerked up and down. He waggled his head, and his face contorted into extraordinary expressions. He was clearly in considerable distress.
Interesting. And I assume he eventually entered your flat.
Yes. Mrs. Hudson saw him up a moment or two later. I offered him a seat, and he began to tell me the most astonishing story.
You have piqued my interest. Pray, do tell.
Mr. Holmes, you have a guest. He seems dreadfully shaken. I know you've just woken, but he was insistent that he be ushered into your rooms at once.
Indeed. I saw him from the street, Mrs. Hudson. While I appreciate your reticence to allow him an audience with me at this ungodly hour, I ask that you throw caution to the wind and allow him to enter anyway.
If you say so, Mr. Holmes.
Pray compose yourself, sir, and let me have a clear account of who you are and what it is that has befallen you.
Thank you, sir. You were recommended to me by a dear friend at Scotland Yard who assured me that you could be trusted with sensitive information.
It is my pleasure to help in any way that I can.
You may not recognize my face, but my name is no doubt known to you.
You are correct in your assumption that I have never seen you before, but I do know who you are, Mr. Alexander Holder. I also happen to know that you are a senior partner at the First Bank of England.
Yes, but how could you have known all that about me? We've never met.
It was quite simple, really. Your expensive dress cued me into the fact that you must be a man of some wealth and importance. I concluded that you were either a member of the aristocracy or a highly placed businessman. Members of the ruling class are rarely out this early on a Monday, and your dress is somewhat formal for this hour of the day. So businessmen it is. The rolled-up newspaper sticking out of your coat pocket is open to the financial pages, and I can see red ink circling the First Bank of England. If you were a teller or an account manager, you would be at work at this moment. Since you're here, you must have had some freedom to come and go as you please. Lastly, I know that your bank has 3 partners. The other 2 are on a well-publicized business trip to the United States, so I made an educated guess. Alexander Holder.
That's quite impressive, Mr. Holmes. I now have little doubt that I have been sent to the right place for help.
Please, tell me what brings you here today.
Well, this is a bit of a story. You can imagine that my position at the bank gives me good fortune to occasionally assist high-born and wealthy patrons. Yesterday morning, a man came into the bank seeking my assistance. I cannot tell you who he was, but rest assured that he holds the future of our nation in his hands. I have no doubt that you could guess this man's name. However, I implore you to keep this entire affair a closely guarded secret, as I could stand to lose my job and my good reputation. An even greater fear is that my welfare and the security of the British Empire could very well be at stake if any of this were to become public.
You can rely on me, Mr. Holder. Please, continue with your story.
This man was seeking a loan of £50,000. He bade me to secrecy and said that although he could borrow the money from friends, he didn't want to place himself in a position where he was obligated to them, as that could jeopardize the nation's security. I was only too happy to assist him without question or hesitation, and I saw it as my duty to do so. However, the bank requires some form of collateral. My partners would have quickly realized a discrepancy if I had lent the money without some kind of guarantee, no matter who the borrower might be. The patron had anticipated this and placed a small, glittering golden tiara on my desk, fitted with the most beautiful diamonds I had ever seen. I recognized it immediately, for I had only seen it in one place. The tiara is part of the crown jewels, worn by the Princess of Wales herself to a royal ball I had the great fortune to attend a few months previous. I told him I would gladly accept the tiara as collateral, and he was soon on his way, cash in hand. He promised to return within a week to repay the loan. Then he vanished from my office.
That all seems straightforward enough.
Here's where the story gets complicated, Mr. Holmes.
Go on.
I was nervous to leave the tiara in a private safe in my office. After all, bankers' safes have been burglarized before, why not mine? So I carefully took the tiara home and placed it in my home safe. I intended to bring it to work with me again next week when the client promised to return. I currently live with my son Arthur, a close niece named Mary, and one maid, Lucy Parr. I foolishly showed my son and the niece the tiara before locking it in my home safe. It was just so beautiful I couldn't resist. They both admired it, but I never should have done that. A little background information on my family is required for you to fully understand the gravity of my predicament. I love my son Arthur, but he has been the bane of my existence, causing nothing but trouble ever since his 16th birthday.
How old is he now?
He turned 22 a month ago. He has been nothing but a disappointment to me. I suppose it's my fault, having done nothing but spoil him since his mother died when he was only a boy. But my actions gave him a taste of expensive things and habits. He's often gallivanting around the world, going off to exotic places, spending all of his allowance, and never working to replenish the money he has foolishly spent. I hoped that he could join me in the banking business, but he refused. Recently, he began asking for additional money. I asked him what for, and he would not tell me. He only said that he would come to some grievous harm if he couldn't find the cash, and quickly. I can only assume that he has developed a habit for gambling. I have an acquaintance or two who have seen him at the local club, known for gambling, causing trouble with a young man named Sir George Burnwell. At any rate, after dinner on this fateful night, I placed the tiara in my dressing room safe and went to sleep. I was awakened around 2 a.m. to a sound coming from the adjacent dressing room. I went in to find my son, dressed in nothing but a shirt and pants, bent over the tiara. It had been horribly bent, and a number of the diamond jewels had been wrenched from the settings. "Arthur," I cried, "you have destroyed that tiara." I grabbed the tiara from his hands and asked him where the missing jewels were. "Stolen," he cried. I called him a liar and a thief, and he stormed out of the room saying I had insulted him enough times and that he would have none of it. I wanted to call the police, but I was afraid of this situation becoming public. If my patron found out that a handful of the diamonds from his tiara had been wrenched from their original settings, my career and my life could be over. So I roused a close friend from the police force from his slumber around 3:30 a.m. this morning to discreetly seek out his advice. He quietly arrested my son and is keeping him in the local jailhouse, but has been unable to get any additional information from Arthur. So I asked if anything else could be done.
He sent you along to me.
That's correct.
What can you tell me about your niece?
She is the kindest, sweetest girl I know. She came to live with us after her parents died unexpectedly. I was hoping that she would be a better influence on my son, and while he holds a great deal of affection for her and treats her as his own sister, the relationship is sadly not altered his reckless behavior.
Who else is regularly in your home?
Well, as I said before, the maid Lucy lives with us, but she was out last evening, and I don't know and did not know the tiara was in the home. Also, my son's friend, the aforementioned Mr. Burnwell, has on occasion spent an evening with us, but I don't see how either of those people could have been involved. Plus, I'm certain my son has stolen these diamonds in order to pay off his debt. I would be willing to pay any amount to see these jewels recovered, Mr. Holmes. I pray you can help find them.
That's a very interesting problem, Mr. Holder. I will need to have some further questions answered, but there is no additional information you can provide at the moment. So I will need to call on you in your home later today in order to search for clues and speak with your niece and maid.
I can head home right now and meet you there as soon as you're able.
That will work nicely. I'll see you no later than 3 o'clock.
I can't thank you enough, Mr. Holmes. This is a scandal in the making, and my son will destroy our name and reputation if you are unable to bring this to a quick and satisfactory conclusion.
I will certainly do my best, Mr. Holder. Now, I must see you out in order to get ready for my day. I will see you soon.
That is most interesting, Holmes. But it sounds like a somewhat boring case for you to take on.
How so, Watson?
Why, it seems obvious. After all, the culprit is known to you. This young Arthur Holder sounds like a cad.
I'm not positive that it was he who took the diamonds.
Really? Now I am intrigued.
Do you not think it odd that young Arthur Holder would sneak into his father's room at great risk himself and his own well-being, open a noisy safe and steal a handful of priceless diamonds after prying them loose from a tiara? Why not take the tiara elsewhere once it had been retrieved? Why go to all that trouble?
When you put things that way, it does seem a little far-fetched. But I don't see who else could have done it. he was caught red-handed.
That remains to be seen, my dear Watson. We will just have to question the niece and the maid when we arrive at Holder's home. But now I must think, Watson. We should arrive at our stop in about 30 minutes.
As Holmes and Watson continue their travels, this seems like a great time to hear a few words from our sponsor.
Moms and dads of the Midwest, when was the last time you heard your kids say,
Mom, I'm bored.
or how about,
Dad, Stacy won't stop singing show tunes.
maybe you've even heard,
Mom, none of my friends want to play chamber music.
sound familiar? Have I got the solution for you? You can send your Johnny, your Kathy, your precious little Angela to the heart of the Manistee National Forest and the greatest 12 days of their lives at
The Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp.
Blue Lake has it all. Band, choir, dance, orchestra, visual arts, theater. Does Johnny play jazz trumpet?
Blue Lake has that.
Does Kathy fly around the house on her toe shoes?
Blue Lake has that.
Is little Angela constantly soliloquizing from her favorite Shakespearean play?
Blue Lake has that.
So come on down and check us out. Maybe this is the summer for your son or your daughter to join us at
The Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp.
If your kids are bored and you need a little break, send them to the fine arts camp called Blue Lake. Now let's get back to our story. When we last left Holmes and Watson, they were about to arrive at the home of Mr. Holder. The train has just left the station as we rejoin our heroes for part 2 of Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Diamond Tiara.
My, Holmes. This Mr. Holder must be an important fellow. Look at the size of this house.
He is, Watson. And if we cannot help him, I fear the consequences will reach much further than his immediate family. Before we ring the bell, let's take a look around the outside of the home. The snow has not yet melted from yesterday's storm, and I have a feeling we may find some illuminating things. You go to the left, I'll head off to the right.
What exactly am I looking for, Holmes?
Tracks, Watson, human foot traffic.
Of course. I'll holler if I find something. Tracks? I don't quite see anything. Wait, under that window. Holmes! I found something!
Good work, Watson. This is exactly what I was looking for. Now let me see. How interesting.
What is it?
Take a look for yourself. What do you notice?
It looks like maybe 2 sets of tracks. One heads off into the distance away from the house. The other heads around to the back of the house.
Yes, but what else do you see?
Oh my. The set of footprints heading around to the back seem to be from a barefooted person.
Quite right, Watson.
I can clearly see the indentations of the individual toes. Why would someone be out here in bare feet?
We shall just have to question the members of the household to find out. Let's head around to the front door.
Right on time, Mr. Holmes. Come in, please.
Thank you, Mr. Holder. Allow me to introduce my associate, Dr. John Watson.
I thought you were coming alone.
I rarely take on any case without Watson's assistance. I assure you, he is the epitome of discretion. You can trust him as fully as I do.
In that case, welcome, Dr. Watson. I trust that Mr. Holmes has filled you in on the details of my problem.
Indeed he has. I am happy to be of service.
I would like to question the members of your household, Mr. Holder. Could you please call them?
I have already assembled them in the parlor. Please follow me. Here we are. Mr. Sherlock Holmes, meet my niece, Mary, and our maid, Lucy.
How do you do?
I have already told you why Arthur is not here, but I can arrange a private consultation with him if you desire.
That may not be necessary, Mr. Holder. And thank you, ladies, for welcoming me and my associate, Dr. Watson, into your home. We will not take much of your time.
I'm so glad you're here, Mr. Holmes. Your name is well known to me. I've read all of Dr. Watson's accounts of your adventures. I'm sure you'll be able to help clear my dear cousin's name.
Hush, Mary. I told you he's as guilty as they come.
On the contrary, Mr. Holder, I happen to agree with Miss Mary.
As happy as that would make me, I can't see how you figure that. He was caught red-handed. I just don't see any other solution.
That, my dear sir, is why you've invited me to your home. Miss Mary, you were here last night, were you not?
Yes.
And did you hear anything out of the ordinary?
No, my uncle told us about the tiara, and then we all retired to bed. I read for a while and fell asleep before midnight.
And what about you, Lucy?
I was not here. I was out with me fella.
Oh, who is this young man?
Francis Prosper, the greengrocer.
And what time did you return?
It must have been about 1:45 in the morning.
Did you notice anything strange upon your arrival back in the house?
No, sir. At least,
Yes.
I thought I heard the window shut on the east side of the house. It squeaks, you see, but I couldn't be sure. It was such a faint sound. I waited for a moment and heard nothing more, so I went to sleep.
Thank you. Mr. Holder, I think that is all the information I require from you or your household.
That's it. Are you going to examine the premises or anything else?
No. I have a few inquiries to make elsewhere. I would ask that you return to my flat tomorrow morning. I should have the answers you seek by then. Watson and I will see ourselves out.
Mr. Holmes, wait. I pray that you help my cousin. I know my uncle is convinced of his guilt, and while I know Arthur has gotten into some difficult situations, I know he would not do something like this.
You yourself may be able to help your beloved cousin. What can you tell me about Lucy's young man, Mr. Prosper?
Not much. I've only met him once or twice. He seems nice enough. He keeps to himself for the most part. Some of the people in the town like to gossip about him on account of his wooden leg, but you know how small towns can be. He's basically harmless. I don't think he and Lucy have been seeing each other for long.
Thank you for your help, Miss Mary. I will have this all wrapped up within the day. I am certain your cousin is innocent of this crime.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Come, Watson. I have work to do.
While Holmes gets to work, let's take another break and hear from our second sponsor.
Are you bored of the same old social media? Uninspired by cat videos? Tired of TikTok? Are you longing for a little of that Blue Lake magic? Well, look no further. Blue Lake's Virtual Arts is here to help. Follow at Blue Lake Official on Instagram and Facebook to receive new content throughout the summer season. Virtual Arts will be bringing you lessons from some of your favorite Blue Lake faculty members, resources to further your artistic side, a chance to vote for your favorite camp songs, and so much more. Where else can you get advice on your embouchure, learn a new style of poetry, and chuckle at a dancing T-Rex, all in the same place? Follow at Blue Lake Official on Instagram and Facebook to join the fun. And check out Virtual Arts at bluelake.org to catch up on what's been happening so far.
And now, we rejoin our fearless adventurers for the thrilling conclusion to Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Diamond Tiara.
That gentleman you've been waiting for has arrived, Dr. Watson.
Has Holmes returned, Mrs. Hudson?
Not yet. But I'm sure you can entertain his guest until Mr. Holmes gets back. You know what he's like. He's been out all evening, but it's not like him to be late for an appointment.
You're right. Show Mr. Holder in, please.
Please come in, sir. You know Dr. Watson, I presume?
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Holder, right on time.
Morning, Dr. Watson. I sure hope you and Mr. Holmes have some good news for me. Things have only gotten worse since I saw you yesterday afternoon.
Oh dear. How so?
My dear Mary has left my home, forever it seems.
How do you know this?
A note, left by her before she left the house under the cover of darkness.
How terrible.
She said that she could no longer live under my roof if I refused to believe my son, and that I should not come looking for her. She had an entire night to get a head start, so I have no hope of finding her.
My dear fellow, how incredibly sad.
I hope Holmes has some good news for me. Where is he?
He has not yet returned from his outing last night. He often disappeared like this when we still lodged together in this flat. I have no doubt he will turn up shortly. In fact, I think I can hear his footsteps on the stair now.
Dear chap, I have solved your problem.
Alas, you have not solved all of his problems, Holmes. His niece Mary has run away.
I am already aware of this development.
You
are?
Yes, and in a few moments, you yourselves will know just how I learned of this development. Here they are. Come in.
Mary? And Sir George Burnwell, what are you doing here, together?
George, draw your gun and keep it trained on Holmes.
What is the meaning of this?
George and I are engaged, Uncle.
Engaged to this blackguard? Since when?
Since about 3 months ago. We fell for one another soon after Arthur began bringing George home with him, but I knew you'd disapprove, so we kept it a secret.
Mary, we need to get going. Let's get this over with.
So, Holmes, I brought the jewels. I got your message promising £1,000 per diamond. We're on a tight schedule, so cough it up.
Mr. Holder, I believe that you said I was permitted to spend any amount of money to retrieve the diamonds. £3,000 seems like a low fee to avert a national crisis and the permanent scar on your family name.
Mary, I don't... How could you?
George was just too irresistible. We wanted to elope. He has family in America, but doesn't have a penny to his name in England. So I convinced him to help me steal the diamonds from the tiara and sell them. Mr. Holmes here has been most generous in his offer of £3,000. It's more than we'd get elsewhere.
Hand over the money, Holder, or I'll start shooting.
I suggest you pay the man, Holder. I know it hurts, but it's the only way to clear your name and protect the British nation.
Fine. I have some money in my satchel by the door, Mary. It's about £3,500 in there. Just take it all.
I'll just place these diamonds on the table here. Don't move a muscle, Mr. Holmes. I told you Arthur didn't take the diamonds, Uncle. You should have listened to me. Now you have them back. Come on, Georgie, it's time to go.
I'll keep my gun drawn until we're out in the street, Mr. Holmes. Don't try and come after us, or I'll shoot.
Holmes, we have to go after them.
We won't catch them. And even if we did, would you want to have Mary back in your home, knowing what you know now?
No. But we could prosecute them, punish them for what they've done.
Then you would have to admit what happened. As things stand now, you can set those stray diamonds back in the tiara and return them to your client. No one will be ever the wiser.
is right, you know. It will be difficult, but you really don't have much choice there, chap.
I guess you're right. However, did you solve this problem, Mr. Holmes?
I told you that I thought your son was innocent. I also knew that you yourself didn't take the diamonds. That left either your maid, your niece, or some other person. I checked around town, and your maid was indeed out with young Francis Prosper. They were seen together in the tavern by multiple people over the course of the night, so Lucy's story seemed to hold. There was an hour unaccounted for when no one was in the tavern. Young Prosper could have committed the crime then, but I was also able to rule him out because of the tracks.
Tracks?
The foot tracks in the snow outside the east window of your home. I knew they had to be connected to this crime because the snow had fallen the afternoon before the crime took place. I imagine you don't get much foot traffic on that side of the home. There were the footprints of two people, one barefoot, the other booted. But neither of them had a wooden leg, a feature unique to Mr. Prosper, and one that would have been particularly obvious in the freshly laid snow. So I was able to rule out both he and your devoted maid. I then reasoned that at least one of those footprints had to belong to the perpetrator of this crime. It must have been the booted prints. No one would enter your home, take off their shoes, and then refuse to put them back on before heading out into the snow. You told me yesterday morning that your son Arthur was in your dressing room in nothing but a shirt and pants. Therefore, the barefoot prints must have been his.
Of course, that makes sense.
It also stands to reason that he had followed the perpetrator of the crime out into the snow to retrieve the tiara. Why else would he be in the snow without shoes? There was only one other person who might have known about the tiara, Sir George Burnwell. After all, by your own admission, he was the only other person who occasionally visited your home. Also, his name is known to me as a ne'er-do-well and raconteur. I have occasionally crossed paths with him, but never in respectable circles. I had a feeling he may have had something to do with this scandal. I donned one of my many disguises and inquired after him at his residence. His valet was most accommodating with information. He's not too enamored of his employer anyway. It turns out that Sir Burnwell returned to his house very early this morning and required some first aid. It seems that he'd gotten into some sort of tussle. The valet was also asked to hide 3 loose diamonds in Sir Burnwell's safe. All of the pieces fit together at that point. Your niece Mary must have had a secret assignation with Burnwell planned for last night. When he arrived, she told him about the tiara. With her help, he was able to steal the tiara from your safe. But he was foiled by your son. Arthur chased Burnwell to the east side of your house where a fight ensued. Your son was able to retrieve the tiara, but it got bent in the process. Burnwell had already removed the 3 diamonds that you see there in front of you. When you found Arthur, he had a choice. By your own admission, he loved Mary as his own sister, and he knew it would break your heart if you discovered the truth. He wanted to protect you and his niece both. So he decided to try and fix the tiara himself. When you discovered him, he was unwilling to tell you what had actually transpired. Once I knew all of these details, all it took to bring things to some conclusion was to send a message to Mary. Through some underworld acquaintances of mine that I was in the market for some diamonds and to meet me at this address in the morning. That brings us to the present moment.
I'm amazed, Mr. Holmes. And while I'm very sad all this has transpired, I'm forever in your debt. You have averted a crisis of international proportions and saved my reputation at the same time.
As things stand now, I think you owe your son an apology and a debt of gratitude. I've taken the liberty of sending a telegram to your local police station. I'm sure you'll find him at home when you return.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. I hope it's not too late to patch up things with Arthur. Have a good day, sir. And thank you for your assistance as well, Dr. Watson.
I didn't do much, Mr. Holder, but you are very welcome nonetheless. Once again, Holmes, you amaze me. I was sure young Arthur must be guilty.
I can understand why both you and Mr. Holder made the assumption, my dear fellow, but the facts of the case just didn't add up. And it was your discovery that helped to crack the case.
My discovery?
Yes, the tracks in the snow.
You would have discovered them eventually, Holmes.
Maybe so, Watson, but nevertheless, I'm always happy to have you by my side. Until next time?
Yes, dear Holmes. Until next time.
And that, dear friends, brings this week's adventure to a close. I'd like to thank our Mystery Thriller Theater players. As Mr. Holder, Robert Smith. As the porter, Andrew Anglin. As Sir George Burnwell, Josh Inman. As Lucy Evans, Angie Boyle. As Mrs. Hudson, Jennifer Little. As Miss Mary Holder, Catherine Mayberry. As Dr. John Watson, Francis Boyle. And finally, as Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Drew Vidal. Maria Sumner played this week's music, and all sound effects were once again created and recorded by David Little. And as always, I'm your host, Jessica Humphrey. This week's episode of Mystery Thriller Theater was adapted and directed by David Taylor Little. We'd like to thank our sponsor, the Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp. Join us next week as we listen to another thrilling adventure on Mystery Thriller Theater.